Remigration, will it happen? This video is from a guy called Wealth Allocator, 4,000 subs. This video has 73,000 views. This video popped the fuck off. I don't think remigration can happen because white people, I'll be honest, white people are pussies and they never put their foot down. But let's see what would happen.
Your country has imported millions and millions of third worlders. And now after seeing how amazing and great
Yeah, emphasis on the fucking rainbow. Holy shit.
this all has been
LGBTQ.
working out, you ask yourself if it is possible to reverse this beautiful cultural gift. And if it is possible, will it actually happen? The process of reversing mass migration is called remigration. To understand the different approaches to remigration, let's look at migration first. Or
I will say this, anybody who says diversity is our greatest strength is a bona fide retard and they should be disregarded immediately.
to be more precise, at the 3 different approaches to handle the challenges of multiculturalism. The Eastern European approach, the Western approach, and the approach countries like the Emirates and Russia are taking. Other countries not in this list can still somehow be fitted into one of these categories. The Eastern European approach, which countries like Poland, Belarus and Hungary took, is the easiest to explain. You just don't let anyone in and you are done. The Western approach is to let everybody in. And when conflicts are
Here's the other problem, okay? I don't care if the United States of America is a melting pot. The problem is that people ask not what they can do for their country, and the only thing they ask is what their country can do for them. And it should be the exact opposite. Everybody comes to the United States expecting this, expecting that, but they don't do anything for their country to deserve it. If we were to just punish those who have come here and given us nothing but live off of welfare, it would be a better place. If you have lived off of welfare for longer than 8 years, when you are well within your means to be able-bodied and work a job, you should be kicked out of the country. I mean, even more so, if you've been here longer than 2 years as a migrant and you have not gotten a job, you have not provided a dime for our country, get the fuck out. We need to work for our country, not the opposite way, because that's how we get ahead. But the problem is so many people are dragging us behind.
rise, which is not surprising because humans are inherently tribalistic by nature, they start trying to dismantle this tribalism through the means of cultural guilt. But for whatever reason, this process is only applied to the native indigenous population. The migrants, on the other hand, are still allowed to be proud of their ancestry and heritage, fly their own flag, and maintain their very strict traditional family structures.
If you are in, and this is so often, I can't tell you how many times Mexicans come to the United States and then burn the American flag on American soil while waving the Mexican flag. Brother, if Mexico is so much better than the United States, then fucking go back. These people are brainless, bro.
The migrants complain about racism. The native population feels so guilty that they start abolishing century-old cultural practices. They start renaming historic streets and then rapidly ramp up so-called hate speech laws because otherwise they will not be able to maintain their cultural guilt. And this is the only way to make the Western approach to mass migration work. On the other side of the spectrum, you have countries like the Emirates or Russia, where the natives have absolutely zero guilt towards immigrants. They also have massive amounts of immigration, but none of the problems which the West has. If you are surprised about Russia having mass migration, they mostly come from former Soviet countries, especially the Central Asian ones. So if you move there and start calling everybody a racist and demand that they start moderating their own language and how they should change their own culture just to protect your feelings, they will look at you like you're retarded. Because you are. Nobody forces you to move to Russia. Nobody forces you to.
It's like somebody coming into your house and shitting on the way that you live when you're happy and you're comfortable. And they say, no, you need to live the way I want to live, even though it's not even my fucking house. It's pathetic.
Move to Dubai. Imagine a bunch of gays move to Dubai and demand homosexual marriage. They will be told to go back to Canada. So is the solution for the West to just become like Dubai or Russia and give up the idea of remigration completely? No, because this approach has one massive flaw and is inferior to the solution which Poland, for example, has chosen. The massive caveat here is that while their approach may preserve the culture of the natives, natives, you still have to mitigate the fallout of mass migration through really strict laws and very harsh prison sentences. So let's explain the alternative, especially to my American viewers who believe that more guns and more death penalties are the only way to reduce crime.
I think it's certainly a great way, because the reality is, if there's no incentive to change, then it won't happen. And I promise you, a lot of these motherfuckers are going to act up a lot less when they realize they can get fucking killed for a lot less. You need to put the fear of God in these fucking people, because right now they have none. And when people have no fear, they're going to do whatever the fuck they want. We need to be much harsher for a lot less. I'm sorry, guys. And this is a real story. There was, and I shit you not, there was a 40-year-old black man who raped and murdered a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old. It took him 5 years to be killed by lethal injection. How about you see it, it's reported, it's confirmed, you shoot him in the immediately. Why is it taking us 5 years to get rid of murderers and child rapists? And by the way, us jailing him, this is another real fact, cost us as a nation $300,000. Yes, we spent $60,000 annually making sure that this guy was jailed before his execution. Your tax dollars are being used to home murderers and rapists. So yeah, these fuckers for a lot less. It'll actually help quite a lot.
Imagine you walk into a neighborhood which is 100% completely Amish, or maybe 100% Orthodox Jewish. Do you really think somebody over there will stab you with a knife and steal your smartphone? Do you really believe that this is the neighborhood where people worry about locking their houses? No, because it works. It is a tightly knit, homogeneous, high-trust community.
Yep.
Most of Europe used to be like this, and it was amazing. And all of that while having the mildest prison sentences ever. This is the desired outcome of remigration, at least in theory. Unfortunately, remigration is no longer possible in every country. For the United States, in my view, it is already way too late. It is not just that they went from 90% of people having exclusively European ancestry to less than 60, but they were never an ethnically coherent and homogeneous population in the first place. For them, having American citizenship means that you are a full-blown American. This is unique and different from almost all other countries. If I move to China, get a Chinese citizenship, spend my entire life there, I will still never be Chinese. The only thing Americans can try to do right now is to send all illegals back home and hope that this will somehow reduce the strain on the taxpayer.
I want to remind you that these people, by definition, are breaking the law and are here illegally. So how the fuck are they still here? And even worse, how are stupid fucking liberal women encouraging them to stay? Men, get a hold of your fucking women. This shit is embarrassing that this even needs to be talked about.
But looking at the tiny and minuscule amounts of people which Trump has deported, you can forget it. This entire ICE circus which Trump is orchestrating right now is maybe enough to look like a tough guy on Fox News, but it is light years away from actually improving anything. Western Europe is in a different situation.
That's the thing, is that we as people, right, we want more ICE deportations. I'd like to remind you that even Obama deported more people than Trump. Trump needs to talk less and do more, like he did at the beginning of his second term.
Situation right now and still has a chance to preserve their ethno-cultural continuity. Before we dig into which countries are screwed and which are not, are there actually any countries where the natives went from being a minority back to becoming a dominant majority again? Yes, and for that let's look at the Soviet Union. The Soviets used to mass deport every single ethnicity which they didn't like, either to Siberia or to Kazakhstan. So they took Ukrainians from Ukraine, Polish from Poland, and even some Koreans from Korea, and many, many more. They deported so many ethnicities into Kazakhstan that roughly 70% of the entire country was made up exclusively out of foreigners.
Is there a charity that you can donate to support ICE? Because maybe we do a stream where we send more of our money to ICE to deport more illegals. I think that might be my greatest PR spike in history. Maybe we raise some money for ICE if we can find a good charity for that.
This was still the case up
I mean, you would assume that would be called our tax dollars. Give us some Tobuses Tectone, please, very soon.
until just a few decades ago. When the Soviet Union collapsed, all the Ukrainians, Polish, Germans and so on decided to remigrate back to their original home countries. It took them a decade or maybe two, but now Kazakhstan has only 30% of foreigners left. Most of them are ethnic Russians in the north, and in theory, with enough political willpower, you could reduce this down to 15 or even 5%. So it is possible. But what has to change in the West to build up enough political willpower? Public opinion always falls right into the middle of both extremes. On one extreme, it is completely acceptable to put cars on fire and
I love how all the LGBTQ are portrayed by fucking clowns with nose rings and dyed hair.
to beat up people who they perceive to be Nazis. On the other side, you have people who just want to reverse the last few decades of mass immigration. And
Yep. You know, there's a lot of people who call people conservatives, but you want to be a regressive. We need to go back like 30, 40 years.
if this is the most
Obviously.
extreme view on the right, which is still socially acceptable, I don't see how the moderates in the middle will ever get there. The only thing which moves the middle slightly further to the right, even if just by a very tiny amount, is the fact that we have Twitter. But the problem with that is that the European right is relying
Let's go, Elon Musk! Come on!
way too much on Elon Musk, so they have to take one of these three ways to fix it. They either have to get rid of so-called hate speech laws and then wait 5 to 10 years for public discourse to get where they want it to be. Or second, a different country has to be the first to implement remigration successfully. This will show the rest of the world that it is not only possible, but it will showcase the positive impact, for example, on the housing markets and on crime rates. After that, more countries will feel empowered to do the same. Or the last option, they just wait until the situation becomes so bad that people have nothing to lose and finally stop caring about so-called hate speech law.
And that's what they're going to do, by the way, unfortunately. People of this country are far too weak to act, and it's a shame.
The problem with the last approach is that by the time they get there, it will likely be too late. There is this meme in the far right going around that if the moderate solution will fail, society will just escalate to a more extreme approach. And while I agree that remigration is the moderate solution, the truth is if that one fails too, there will be no extreme alternative. There will be no second chance. You just become a third world country and that's it. The only thing natives can try to do after this has happened is to self-segregate into enclaves where they are actually safe and can protect their own culture and identity. And if you have to say
it's actually insane because I'm starting to agree more and more and more. Like, factually, I think a crusade needs to fucking happen, bro. Like, the United States is worse than it has ever been in history. We really are becoming a third world country in real time because we can't tell people who are here illegally to go back the fuck home. And it's so crazy how weak white people are right now. It's embarrassing.
Self-segregate in your own country. Congratulations, you have achieved diversity. So let's look at different approaches to remigration. You have the post-Soviet approach, which I have described earlier, where the living standards in the host country collapses very rapidly, while at the same time their original home country saw a significant improvement in terms of living standards. In that situation, people will decide to remigrate back purely by their own choice. But waiting until Europe collapses could take a decade or maybe even two. And in the meantime, nobody is rebuilding the countries from which all of these migrants are originally from.
Bro, it's crazy. I saw this graph. My numbers could be off slightly, but the ratio is pretty much the same. There was about 30 mosques in the UK in the 1990s, and now in the 2020s, there's 1,800. Like, there was like somewhere between a 500 and 900x increase in mosque in the fucking United Kingdoms over the past 20 years. which is nuts.
So this approach is
That's how insane it's getting over there.
It's not feasible. Then you have the authoritarian approach, where you just take all the people you don't like, put them into a train and send them home. In practice, this solution is completely infeasible thanks to decades and decades worth of European bureaucracy. Getting rid of all of these complicated laws within a reasonable time frame is only possible if you manage to seize absolute power in one single move. And if you fail, it will backfire so badly it literally throws the entire continent into a civil war. This is not the future you want to live in. Just consider how much pushback Trump has received after he deported just a very small amount of people. Now imagine how much worse it will be in Western Europe, where the extreme left is so much more dominant. That's why this approach is not feasible either. The last and most realistic approach to remigration is the one popularized by Martin Sellner, where the idea is to apply remigration pressure in a way that is completely compliant with all the European laws and constitutions. His plan contains 3 different steps: close the borders, send back all illegals, and apply pressure on naturalized but non-assimilated citizens. The thing is, with the extreme slow pace at which the far right is growing right now, by the time they actually get into parliament, all the migrants will not only have already crossed the borders, but also all of them will be naturalized citizens. This is why only the last point is practical in my opinion. So how is he going to do this in a way which is legal and compliant? Because in these jurisdictions it is impossible to treat immigrants differently from natives. So if you introduce such incentives, they have to apply to everybody. So if you ban stuff like halal meat, hijabs and circumcisions, you have to do this for all citizens, no matter whether they are immigrants or natives. And then the next phase of step 3 is just to wait until all the people you don't like will just go back to their home countries. Good luck with that. Of course, if this plan ever gets implemented, there will be more or less aggressive variants. This depends highly on the country which is implementing these measures. It could be possible that some countries will find completely legal ways to denaturalize people in masses. But I only believe it when I see it. Because if you actually get to the point where you can send people back home, you will see massive protests all over the continent. And if you look at how Trump pulled out of Minnesota after just a tiny little bit of pushback, you can imagine how much worse it will be in most European countries. So which country will be the first one to implement remigration? Everybody is talking about Restore Britain in the UK right now, but if you look at Austria, their local right-wing counterpart is at almost 40%. So Austria will likely be the turning point where the right could finally win the absolute majority for the very first time and become a leading example. But for other countries, I'm not sure they will make it at all. In my view, the most likely outcome is that the traditional Europe, which we used to have 2 decades ago, will only continue to exist in a small cluster of countries. And that will be Austria, Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech Republic and probably Poland. We have to wait and see until one country goes first and then hopefully everybody else follows. Until then, the job is just to get elected, but also to prevent the right from falling apart over stupid internal arguments. Because right now, most right-wing parties are internally divided into 2 competing groups and they hate each other. And this could be one of the reasons why you are completely screwed and voting far-right may not even save you.
I have no issues with any person who is a conservative, and I'm always down to have civil discourse with anybody. But it is crazy how something such as we want to save our country, so let's take all the people who are hurting our country out of it, is seen as a hot take. It is not our responsibility to carry across the finish line individuals who are not providing anything to our society, and we should normalize this 100%. We should greatly normalize this, because way too many people are too comfortable in providing absolutely nothing and expecting their country to work for them, not them working for their country. My opinion, which in my opinion is the correct opinion, obviously.